Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome if you're new to this channel. And on Fridays, we talk about the astrology of the weekend. Give ourselves a little bit of a buffer, get an understanding of what to expect. Now, of course, I know that the Friday, Saturday, Sunday window is not everyone's weekend, so to speak. I've worked in the service industry and in a number of caregiving positions in my life, so knowing that that block of time is not necessarily everyone's weekend, but still, it's my weekend, and I want to give you an insight in what to expect astrologically over the next couple of days as I take the time to recharge and to self-source for my own self-care, right? And with the moon in Cancer this weekend, we have the sun and Neptune and Pisces meeting each other. Wow, we're going to be in the feels, but in a way that if we are prepared, if we anticipated it at least, and we understand how much power is available to us through our own feelings, our intuition, and our love, right? And our bonds with each other. I think that we'll find that we have exactly the emotional rootedness in order to give ourselves and substantiate something considerable, something that is transcendent, something that is in line with our universal ethics or our relationship to God, right? Remember, this new moon cycle that we are in right now started with a new moon in Pisces that is trine Sirius. And so the moon is going to cross Sirius over the weekend. Remember, the moon is at home in Cancer as well. So there may be an urge or a strong pull to pull in, to be maybe a little bit more in the feels, in the inner life, a little withdrawn perhaps, or at least just emotionally consolidated into the areas of your own safety and security. But it's going to be in that experience when the sun and Neptune come in conjunction, and it's, as we'll see in the chart, it's exactly when the moon trines both of them in Cancer. Within the hour, the moon trines each of them, and within the hour of those two coming together. So there's something to be said for our character, our own personal individual character, self-esteem, and a deep sense of knowing and where we are stabilized in the world around us. We just get a very sensitive look at that, right? The moon is in Cancer. It's not full. We still have another week to go before that happens, but we have crossed our first quarter crisis point, and now it's at least brighter than it was, right? So things will be we will be more sensitive. It will be more obvious. And there is a kite that we're going to see in the chart on Sunday, I believe. Definitely a grand water trine, but there is a kite within just a few degrees of where Pluto is. And we're going to have a chance again to go back to that. You remember that full moon? That full moon in Cancer, and then also to when we had the we had the full moon 2 months ago was in Cancer, and then we had a full moon in Leo that was the grand square with the nodes, and how the moon came along and was opposite Pluto at one point during that. This is all going to come back up again with the moon in Cancer going to be in opposition to Pluto. So some other things that are happening before I launch into all of the specifics and check in with everyone is that, so there's this kite, right? And we'll go into it, what the kite is, what does it mean, look at all the things in it. This is what we do on Fridays, is just get into the astrology in general. But it's interesting to feel the rhythm, right? The rhythm of these cycles coming back around. And there's rhythms in different cycles that we are now, engaged with on a regular basis. And sometimes it is turbulent, and sometimes it is overwhelming, and sometimes it's really hard to know what's up and what's down. And even though our eyes are what responds to light, and that's a really important sense that shouldn't be overlooked. But we are too dependent on it as a species, and perhaps that's part of our programming in a way, is to, pretty much push away all the feminine intuitive qualities of the feminine, and our ability to use our intuition and our feels, and our ability to use touch and perception and inner sensory perception. And that's a big part of the Cancer energy, right? The fourth house and Cancer is about the sensitivity that can be developed as a result of some sort of outer armor or coating or shell or family or bonds that hold us so that we can allow ourselves to drop in and explore the inner realm. So we'll get a chance to do that. It's going to be completely supporting the Sun Neptune conjunction in Pisces. This conjunction is also pretty much in a relationship with the nodes as well. So the Pleiadian energy is coming back around. The Sirian energy is pretty present this weekend. And that kite is going, again, the opposition with Pluto and the moon in Cancer, right? This is along all of our personal axes, depending on where Cancer and Capricorn is in our charts. It's along a very important axis of the United States natal chart. And I was just thinking today, I think it's time to start expanding to other countries and their natal charts and factor that into some of these readings, but and forecasts, because I think it's important that we start looking at everything, at least in a wider scale. But we do also know that what's happening in the U.S. and the intention of the United States is so directly connected to the Atlantean story, very much based on the founders themselves and what they believed was their role as bringing illumination, finding the new Atlantis, whatever. Whether or not you believe that, that's what they believed, and this is a massive cycle coming back around with the Pluto return. So that opposition to Cancer is also in the United States chart, in the natal chart, as part of fortune. So there's themes that are coming back around again, and you can get a sense of how they may be at a macro level based on what's happening at the micro level. And a moon in Cancer is a great time to get into our own inner selves and see what's going on in there. So I am going to bring this out of studio mode. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick and see what's going on. The stream looks like it's pretty good. How's everyone doing? I am excited to be here. There's going to be full moon forecast coming out next week for subscribers. And then from there, we'll schedule our next Starship Fellowship meeting, and that'll be on or around the third quarter moon. And I do have a report coming and a sale attached to it, a reading sale attached to it for the upcoming equinox and the equinox to solstice period, right? We're going to go from March out to the solstice in June, and that takes us through the eclipse season and then the beginning of the next one. So, I'm the working title right now, again, thanks to Emily and her creative marketing ideas. I wish we could come to some sort of arrangement for you to do this for me more officially. But how does it bloom, right? We did How Does It End when we had the solstice period, and I did the readings for that, and that was in that was the winter solstice or the equinox into the winter solstice. How does it end? Well, this is going to be how does it bloom? How are we coming out of this time now? How is it that we're going to go through spring into the solstice period, or the peak again of the light cycle, regardless of where you find yourself? So that's coming. So just keep an eye on that in terms of, email list is a great way to stay in touch. And then also all of these broadcasts, I'm always letting you know what's up. So I'm going to, what I need to do real quick is cast the chart in the way that I want to look at it. So if you just give me just a moment here. And anybody fan of Talking Heads, that was our opening track this morning. I thought that I thought that the title and the song itself, "Life During Wartime," it seems appropriate right now. So that's linked in the description box below. Your ability to get on Subscribestar as one of our part of the fellowship, the Starseed Fellowship, and you don't have to know if you're a Starseed necessarily, but it does really help to keep up, I would say, with the conversation. And everybody's kind of along their own line in this journey, but we had a really, really awesome gathering, this first one, this week on Wednesday. So there we go. That's what I want to look at. You can get on my mailing list through my website. If you go there, if you go to catalystenergies.net, on the homepage, there's a splash page that comes up, and that is going to take, then you can sign up for the mailing list. And that's a big part of how I communicate a lot of announcements and things like that, and things that I'm offering. So in case you're not on Telegram, because that's the only social media I do other than the video platforms that I am part of. So, okay, I think we're ready now to look at the astrology and get down to it. This is why we're here, right? So, my friends, here we are on this 11th of March, 2022 in the morning. It looks like I cast it for 9:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but let's start looking at where we're at. So the first thing is that the moon is now in Cancer, and has been since pretty much the flipping over of the, moving across the midnight hour, East Coast Standard Time. So moving over Universal Time, roughly, 5 a.m.? So, before we get into this, if you haven't checked out Suspicious Observers and last night's update, usually it's in the morning, but it was last night, I really recommend it, because I'm going to summarize as best I can, is that there was a solar flare that was released yesterday, and it wasn't in itself very strong, the flare itself. I don't think it was more than like a C class, but it was an extended period of time that it was flaring. So there is going to be a CME that is directed at Earth and is expected to arrive on Sunday. And then there's going to possibly be coronal hole stream right behind that. So a 1-2 punch. And this is not necessarily anything to be worried about, just to be aware and to track how it's making you feel, or track what the Schumann is doing, or track a number of different phenomenon that are happening around you. But that for sure, I feel like that we've been kind of waiting for that, because there have not been any flares in a while. And this one was a pretty significant one. And it, like I said, not in strength, but it lasted for a long time. And so the coronal mass ejection is larger and more intense because of that. So the other thing to keep in mind is that there can be electrical disturbances when we get these large solar flares, right? This is something that is now coming into much more of the consciousness of people who are intending to live consciously in their life, right? To awaken, to have a spiritual life, whatever that means to them. You identify as a truther or a light worker or a starseed, or just somebody who is wanting to walk this path of awakening and soul evolution. There is, we know now, and even if you're not that, and you're just a pure scientist and into astrophysics and cosmology and stellar physics, right? I studied both of these things just briefly to help me be a better astrologer, honestly, and because I just have a natural curiosity about natural sciences, which, by the way, is a very Arcturian starseed trait. I mean, anybody can, but I bet if you feel really drawn to these types of subjects, I bet you there's probably Arcturian markings in your chart. So, and that's my 9th house cusp is Arcturus. So, not surprising that I would be drawn to these subjects in terms of a larger perspective or an understanding of how it all works together. Now I just went on a tangent and totally lost myself. I'm so sorry. It doesn't matter. The point is that we know that the solar weather, this is not a new concept for many of us, and how it can have electrical disturbances. Now, if it does, what a great opportunity to, capitalize on that for some reason. Maybe if a lot of people are expecting electrical outages and disturbances, what a great time to just kind of like fly something under the radar. Just an idea. Just keep in mind mind, especially because these transits this weekend are pretty big, right? We're going to look at them and we're going to see, Black Moon Lilith is involved quite a bit in her transit, and the moon in Cancer is having us very sensitive to our inner self and what it is that allows us to feel safe and secure, and a sense of faithfulness and loyalty in Cancer, and nourishment and protection. But with all this Pisces energy, Black Moon Lilith's involved. Chiron is involved when we talk about any cardinal energy. So Aries and Cancer are going to square each other. And the sun reaching Neptune is remarkably beautiful, right? This is our muse actually coming through our own voice. We had this in the reading yesterday. And there's a very specific transit with the moon and Pluto that I just talked about that is very much about the inner muse making decisions or coming to reach, weighing something out intuitively and trusting that inner voice or that muse, right? It's blowing my mind, because I'm like, wow, that reading was just yesterday, and now I see it in the astrology as I go deeper into each moon transit. So it's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful, inspiring, this is like religious conversion almost. Well, not religious, but like fully born again type of energy, right? And substantiating something fully with all of our energy, right? This is giving our voice over to this transcendent substantiation. So it really does depend on where you're falling within your own karma and in the collective's karma with your own free will, that's going to determine what it is that you are substantiating with your vital energy, right? It's important that we are aware of that. And the fog of war is thick with Neptune and Pisces like this. And Jupiter and the sun, yes, they can cut through it a little bit. And what does it look like when the sun, a beautiful clear day at the ocean or on the ocean, if you're if you're out in a boat or something, and the sun is just shining so brightly, right? It's glittering on the water. It's beautiful. It seems magical. And the sun also has a huge impact on our climate and weather patterns in relation to the ocean, which is what Neptune is really responsible for. So there's also substantiation of something unconscious, right? Especially when we're talking about Pisces, but also too a really beautifully inspired, magical, imaginative, spiritual substantiation as well. And with the moon in Cancer, as we're going to see throughout the weekend, when this actually does happen, is when you're really rooted and your root system is strong and is allowing you to draw water from the world around you, or the medium of your growth, and represents those bonds and the strength of them, it is also going to allow for, it's a willful. We have a willful endeavor, right? But what it is doing is the space is there to allow this other seemingly superior power to come in. But I would challenge you or recommend to think about the muse again, because that's going to be a really great way to wrap your mind around, or to categorize, if that's how you work, or just to make sense of these feelings that can be so nebulous, and these feelings that can be so fluid, literally, because we're talking about all of this water and all of this mutability. But Cancer is cardinal. Cancer is cardinal water. There is momentum. There is movement. The roots are growing, right? And it's the roots that draw the water. It's the roots that stabilize the plant in the ground. It's the roots that represent the real stabilizing force, and is how we can draw our bonds closer to consolidate our power of growth, and, maximizing our potential, right? That's what we're here for. So this is the very beginning. So the first thing that's happening is that today the moon is in a just passing Mercury this morning in terms of a trine, right? And this is the very beginning of the testing of the will. But Mercury is, Mercury, the limit is our imagination, as I've said before. Now, this can go a couple of ways, again, because it is Pisces. So it's watery, it's dreamy, it's fantasy. There's very loose boundaries in terms of what's real and what isn't. And Mercury doesn't care to know the difference, as far as I can tell, because we're still in mutable energy. This is familiar to Mercury because it rules 2 other mutable signs. But also the mental realization, right? The conceptualization that our ability to tap into something very old and ancient, right? It's these archetypes of experience that are like petrified wood in petrified tree trunks in the desert, right? Like in Arizona, the Petrified Forest National Park or whatever, shows that yes, these are organic things that break down, but there's something about the fully mature ecosystem, or in this case nature itself, that's able to preserve what has already come before. And it's not perfect, and it might be only fragments, but there's something here. There's something that endures from, that is almost like an achievement, right? Some sort of evidence of life before that is not exactly in its same form, but is a record of it. And when we're talking about Pisces, we're literally talking about the Akashic records. Like, that is, when we're talking about records in Pisces, that's the best way to think about it. And this goes back to that Dark Journalist X series episode that I posted, I think last week, where they're talking about the Atlantean DNA and Edgar Cayce and the Akash, right? So these are concepts that can help you understand what this means if you're not familiar with them. Many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So many of us may find, here's the thing about Cancer, especially the very first degree of Cancer, you raise the flag. This is a point of no return, right? This is just like the root systems actually growing into the soil. Like, there is no moving now, and you've established yourself within this framework, whatever it is, your inner life, your private life, your personal life. These are all Cancer and 4th house energies. So and you make a commitment to that, right? And you have their back, and they have your back. So, but the consciousness that is still functioning at this dualistic dialectic Gemini thing is still kind of still making sense of it. Yeah, I made a decision, but now we have to actually live with the consequences. And so there will be testing. And sometimes we want to run away from that responsibility. We're like, oh, now I have to follow through. And this connection with Mercury and the moon is going to give us some sort of mental inspiration. And again, here's the muse, right? Like, coming in and being like, remember what, there are aspects that are still here, and the mind has the capacity, without the boundaries of just the mental sphere, now to go into the imagination. This is where shamanic journeying really happens, is in this realm. It's the astral. It is the field of consciousness. And Mercury, it needs some boundaries so it doesn't get lost. But at this early stage of Pisces, there is something that we can mentally connect into that will help stabilize emotionally if we're starting to be like, like, I don't know if I'm actually able to fulfill that which I have decided upon, whatever it is. And we've had many rounds of the moon in Cancer, every month. And it's been very potent the last couple of months. So this is just a reminder, but also this stabilizing Mercury. It's so interesting to even consider that character is stable, but it's the mental power that it allows for. Remember, Mercury is able to traverse the underworld, the heavens, and Earth. So the ocean, it's not exactly its best territory, but it's still able to access this realm through the power of our own imagination. That's really where it is. And this is a great place to start, I would say. Let's see here. It says I can't connect the chat. Somebody let me know if that's true. I want to make sure that that's able to happen, because It says I'm disconnected from the chat, and I don't want that to happen. That's exactly chat. Okay, they're trying to reconnect. Okay, I don't know what this is all about, guys. I'm sorry. So, oh, that was so distracting. But the chat is like a big part of this process. I can't lose it. And that's never happened before. So the next spot we're gonna get to here with the moon today is a quincunx to a lot of Aquarius energy. So what I find, what? Uh-oh. What's going on? Something's happening. Okay, I know I'm still recording, so I'm just going to let you know that my internet is having a really hard time, and so I am still recording, and it says I'm streaming, but I'm not able to load anything. So I just want to stay present in the fact that I might not be able to go back and stream, but I'm going to still do this report anyway. So let me see if I can figure this out. Yep, it says I'm offline and there's no internet. You got to be kidding. Is this really when it's going to happen? No, it says I still have a connection to my modem, and so maybe that's what's going on. If I have to do a hotspot, I'll do it. Yeah, oh wow. So I don't have any internet on my computer. Let me check my, I'm so sorry. Let me check. I'm going to actually pause the video, guys, and I'll come back when I know more. I forgot I have that option. So stand by, please. I'll be back before you even know it. Okay, I'm back, and the internet is not, so I still have cell service, but I'm just recording now. I had to stop the stream. No web page is loading, and every time I load a web page through my Wi-Fi, right, that is serviced by Xfinity. Every time I connect to my connection to the router and the modem is fine, but every time I try to load a page, it says that the connection is not private. So something really weird is happening. The other thing is that it reinforces to me how badly I really need to buy astrology software. I am very reliant on the particular websites that I use, and astro.com is amazing, and I would just continue to use that. That's what I use for all of my client readings. But they don't have a great function that allows you to cycle through, by specific time, right, to actually see the chart move. There's no function like that. Anyway, this is underscoring the need for me to get this software. So in the meantime, just know that I'm not going to be able to pull up a chart for you for the weekend. So I have my notes. I have my actual stuff written out and not dependent on the internet necessarily. But even my ability to actually prepare these reports is very much based on my ability to access information online. So this is really important to consider in many different ways right now, because I have and I just said it, didn't I? I just said it about the solar weather coming in and being like, oh, wouldn't that be a great way to fly something under the radar? And like not even a couple moments later, it's just like the internet's gone. So we're going to still do the report. You're just going to, the best, I'll keep the screen of myself up, but if you want to be able to watch, but I will just recommend that this be more audio than anything else as we go through it. And like I said, if you have your own chart that you want to look up, I mean, that would be a great way to utilize this time as well, is to look at the chart that you do have for, or your ability to look at the charts going through the next couple of days. And I will narrate, I suppose. So we already talked about the moon trine Mercury, the testing of the will, each of us feeling the need to overcome a stagnation and cold during a trial of endurance. That's the other thing. Not only is it endurance trial, there is this aspect of things slowing down, right? When you're rooted, you're not really as mobile, just like the thoughts are not really as free when you make a decision or you come to a conclusion or a decision. And also too, when you're not moving around, it becomes cold. Like we all know that. Then one of the best ways to warm yourself up, if you can, is to go be physical. And so, but that's the other thing about the mind, and the inner life becomes a little stagnant and a little cold or lacks heat because there's not as much movement or mutability here. That will change as the consciousness becomes more comfortable with the inner realm through the territory of Cancer. But we have this moment here. So what I was going to say before the internet went away is that we're looking at these quincunxes, right? The 150-degree angle. It's often a green line on astrology charts. It is I want to bring up the quincunx between Cancer and Aquarius, because I find it very interesting because of the fact that they both essentially represent the same thing in terms of holding the water, right? Cancer represents the holding of the water or holding of the spirit or the feeling in the flow, right? Some sort of vessel or cup or even a shell, right? Or armor. You can think about it as a womb, if that helps, in terms of connecting it to the feminine. But Aquarius also is a container in its own right. It holds the water of the collective. It holds it is the container of a social collective, of a social organism of individual beings that come together and create something more than themselves. The society in itself, the civilization, also holds the water, and the water of Pisces, right? So these two energies have a relationship to each other, but they're quincunx, right? They don't fit together. They are the square peg in the round hole, so to speak, but they do have the same function. So we want to look at where the differences are, as well as what is similar about them. And so with Cancer, we're talking about the individual's emotional capacity, the individual's sensitivity to themselves and their inner life, and where their personal power comes from. And so that comes from a consolidated lattice structure of emotional bonds or family traditions or customs, or just an identification with something that does nurture or hold or protect, right? All of those Cancerian elements. But it's still about the individual. And a moon in Cancer, absolutely about how the individual is feeling. We all are going to feel into the space where we are able to be emotionally ourselves and to feel secure. Mars and Venus are still traveling in the same whole degree of Aquarius. That's pretty much going to end over the weekend as Venus starts moving out ahead of Mars in some ways, surveying and scouting for what Mars is going to come through and do, because that's what Mars does, is do, right? It's action or action potential. That's also part of it. And desire, right? The desire to actualize oneself and being, not really thinking about it, just being. But Aquarius is about the society, a collection of people in general, and is a fixed air sign. We're talking about the bandwidth of the signal that is able to transfer through the water of the collective, much like water itself is a major conductor of electricity, and is that's why you want to stay away from it in a thunderstorm, right? So these two things, how do we rectify or find, how do we adjust ourselves in the face of something that seems like they don't fit together? Well, we find the common ground, which is, again, is about the container that holds the water. And Mars and Venus are very powerful when it comes to their connection to Aquarius, so close together, and identifying where we're going to go from here in terms of a new and innovated upgraded sense of relationship, something that is more than just ourselves. And that, I think, is where the adjustment comes from, because the degree really suggests that if we try to pit our own selves against the power of that which we have committed ourselves to, even at a personal level, it's going to a karmic adjustment. Let's just put it that way. While Mars and Venus are still in early Aquarius, finding a sense of personal strength in traditions, right? That are from the past, right? Like a root foundation of past performances. So, and not past performances necessarily of the individual, but past performances of the society in general, right? The root foundation of these past performances, and it really sustains whatever decision is going to be made in a crisis by a person. So, the other thing is that it can be a personal strength here, or it can be inertia of traditions that cannot transcend where it's come from, right? It cannot get past, right? It's like if you think about how the idea that if your inner bandwidth or the frequency that your field is operating at, if it's not able to reach a particular threshold, you might not be able to. And this, I think this really freaks people out. And I wonder too how much of this is like propaganda from other spheres, but the idea that if you can't reach a certain threshold, you don't ascend. Well, instead of thinking about it that way, just thinking about it in the inertia of situations, inertias of collective experience that can't get past that limited origin, can't actually break through that glass ceiling. So it goes either way, right? It's a foundation of personal strength or inertia, but it comes from a collective of individuals, a societal collective of individuals that is at the root of whatever decision is being made as we face a crisis point. So there's nothing wrong with relying on these precedents to tap into great power and tap the power of its deepest roots. This is really important because it's just going to take a bit of adjustment to acknowledge that if we try to pit ourselves against something so established and powerful, we may find ourselves in a very drastic karmic adjustment. And with this quincunx, I would say that that's exactly what's going to happen. But we could also see that the past performances, the root foundation of society that has led us to where we are now at a social level, as a civilizational level, right? The Aquarius nature is about humanity as a whole. It is also, like I said, a source of strength, as maybe our individual self has to contend with this karmic readjustment. It really depends on if we are getting, like I said, strength, or if it's inertia that's holding us back. This is going to be a very personal experience today. And again, I mean, maybe this has a lot to do with the internet, right? Nothing can stop what's coming. So, and also too, to consider that Mars, Venus is moving ahead of, this is a different day, sorry. I was like really confused. So a couple other things to look at as we move forward, just to give context for the weekend, is Saturn has moved into the next degree of Aquarius, Pluto has moved into the next degree of Capricorn, and I think when these large, slower moving planets change degrees, it's almost it's palpable. You can tell, right? These are transitions that are way more obvious to us because of our timeline limitations or our lifespan or cycle limitations in materialism. So Saturn, and especially Pluto, when they move into a new section of the sky, they have a whole new energy attached to them. And That's going to factor into many of these transits this weekend. So Lilith is going to also come into a conjunction, Black Moon Lilith, with, not conjunction, I'm so sorry, a quincunx. Speaking of quincunxes, right? There's a lot of actually difficult energy with the Cancer Moon today. All of the transits, other than with Mercury, they're all quincunxes or squares. So the beginning parts of our rootedness or finding our inspiration from our inner life. Remember the muse from yesterday's reading, or the Thursday the 10th reading, is where we can, finding the inspiration from that place, that inner inspiration, because we're going to be bombarded already, I can already tell, with lots of different challenges, but they're opportunities. They're opportunities to adjust ourselves. They're opportunities to practice our own inner alchemy and how to square the circle, so to speak. So Lilith is going to come into this quincunx with K2, right, the south node of the moon in Scorpio, and Lilith being the mitochondrial DNA, right, the original divine feminine blueprint, like our original blueprint as humans, and her allegiance to that above all else, to the point where in the story, I mean, she really did ostracize herself, right? That she wouldn't go back into the situation where, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I'm really looking forward, actually, to reading a book called Keeper of the Flame. It's written by Mary Blue, but it's from an evolutionary astrology perspective. And I found it, and I was like, it's time to read what Jeffrey Wolf Green has said about Lilith. And I'm looking forward to that because I think there's going to be a lot to learn from it. So, but, there is a sense of primal survival and a sense of self-preservation that it connects us to a deep source of power with Lilith, and especially in retrograde, right? It's really inverted, or it's really internalized. Maybe it's not nearly as obvious. We're just feeling it, but it's not really being expressed so much yet. Maybe it's being expressed without understanding it entirely. All these retrograde potentials. But what is interesting is that it's in a quincunx to K2, which is in Scorpio, and Lilith is in Gemini, late Gemini, right? These are this is an Orion starseed marking with Lilith. This is a Pleiadian marking with the South Node, as we know. And while there seem, it's going to be very difficult. Let's just put it this way. It is going to be very difficult to get an X-ray vision of our past and to get a sense of the structural knowledge of what's going on under the surface, while also feeling a very deep need to prune back a lot of our ideas right now, and our mind. How are we going to prune back? And this is the issue of the quincunx, by the way. This is what it'll allow us to adjust. How do we prune back? How do we honor that part of ourselves? And what is pruning other than you are consolidating resources for the parts of the plant that are really going to bear the most or the best or the healthiest fruit? Pruning, it's more than just shaping the plant. It allows resources to go towards where it's going to be most successful and not get all crazy and out of, completely wild and spreading out all over the place. Well, when we get an X-ray view of what's happening under the surface with something like Scorpio, it can be very difficult to prune anything back because all of a sudden you got a whole new set of information that you are exposed to. So it's in this quincunx that we will find our ability to adjust ourselves in a way to see the benefit of having that vision, that X-ray vision, to be able to get at the structural knowledge that has been, right, that we've already gone through, but at the same time, to not get pulled into it, to not let the tendrils of our own mind in Gemini to start wildly going out of control. And in fact, Lilith, if we're not very mindful of this, we could find ourselves like just cutting down way too much. Now, if you've ever pruned a plant or a tree too much, you risk damaging it, right? Or not pruning it in the right place. So this is a way that Lilith retrograde, this is a people just being like, nope, Nope, I'm not even going to look at that. I'm not even going to acknowledge that. That's not even, nope. But in the process, they damaged any new growth. So keep that in mind, that K2 is where we've been, and this is going to be some of the hardest for people to wrap themselves around, is that what we're experiencing in the Scorpio realm, which came up a lot in the fellowship gathering, is Scorpio and what it really means. And there was content in the recent astrology summit about the South Node in Scorpio and what it means. So, but we don't want to risk. And some people, they're going to feel like that's the way. But for us that are going to take the opportunity to adjust ourselves, this is important. And after that, the moon comes into a square with Pallas Athena, and who's in Aries and is coming very close to conjunction with Chiron, by the way, and really capitalizing strategically off of somebody's wounds. Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. But the moon in Cancer in a square to this, right, is again that we may understand and find the wisdom in looking at things from a new symbolic perspective, right? To take ourselves out of the emotional arousing aspects of it and to see it in a much broader perspective, a wider perspective. There's a strategy to that, absolutely, within our own selves, like our own subjective experience and in our own potential. But the moon, it's going to feel like we are being ground down with, with a tool. It's going to feel like the grinding of cutting a diamond. But remember, it's a diamond, right? And it's raw value that is being shaped into something that is more in line with what we would identify as a diamond, right? And so there's a craftsmanship that goes along with it that is way more, takes a lot more time and focus and commitment to doing than just seeing things from a wider perspective. That perspective and that strategy is very important, and the square is just going to be the conflict there. And I would recommend that, rather than bypassing your feelings when it's very uncomfortable, lean into the challenge here of seeing even that process as from a wider perspective. Utilize the wisdom of Pallas Athena and see things from a larger, not only a wider perspective from within yourself and what we can actualize, but also a wider perspective of this whole process from a soul level as well. But it's going to feel pretty uncomfortable throughout the day. So I'm not surprised in some ways that there's no internet right now. So let's look at the 12th, because it's just going to get so much more interesting, my friends. So the moon will be in Cancer all day as well on Saturday. It's going to first square Chiron and then sextile Uranus pretty much at the same time. This is something that came up I think in some of the forecasts, depending on some signs more than others, but it's the idea that there is a latent value in what we are feeling and experiencing on the inside that hasn't really revealed itself fully, but reveals in an energetic way. And that's going to, the challenge and conflict with the square to Chiron, that is looking for some cosmic order, right? And in fact, whenever we attempt to allow ourselves to find that cosmic order within ourselves, it very easily polarizes our own consciousness and our own identity between the human set of principles and order, right? Social order, social principles, in relation to some sort of idealized view of cosmic order. That is it's going to bring it. These questions are going to become much more relevant as Chiron keeps pulling us back into those old stories of who we've been or who we think we need to be, and not allowing ourselves to, or being very uncomfortable with the repolarization as we start to acknowledge the the old stories and the old identities that are kind of heaped upon us to keep us from actually aligning with any version of cosmic order. So the moon in a square to Chiron is going to be a reminder, especially as it's sextile Uranus that is now moving into a new degree this weekend too, right? So there's some big players. Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto are moving into new degrees. So there's a quality that's changing at these larger collective levels. And so the moon, before that happens with Uranus, the moon will sextile Uranus while it's in a square to Cancer in Aries. And it may be triggering, but what we do see is an opportunity and an investment opportunity, an alchemical opportunity with the moon sextile Uranus to allow ourselves to energetically root into what is latent within us as a result of or in relation to the glitching of the material world that Uranus represents, right? All of the possibilities of what we can have and what we can do and what we want being presented in front of us as a result of the glitch of the matrix. And it's very uncomfortable, right? It is really, we're really getting into a stage now of some heavy baggage that Uranus is going to start representing. Well, Uranus is the exact opposite of heavy baggage, by the way. It doesn't have any room for baggage. And so coming into a degree of Taurus that has to do with that, just so you know, there is going to be plenty of opportunity to shake that shit off or be in total alignment with the next, the next level up, the next pitch up of what it means to gain anything or to work for something or to carry the load of that which we want to attain. Boy, it's going to be heavy, and Uranus will trigger some people to try to break free. Uranus may also break people free in tower moments, but it's going to be the moon in this sextile while it's in a square to Chiron that is going to allow us to tap in intuitively and internally to the latent worth of all of what's happening right now, right? Especially for our own growth and our own emotional sensitivity. There's a lot more, well, I wouldn't say favorable, but it's a little bit more balanced on Saturday when it comes to the moon, because then it comes into a trine with Jupiter, and Jupiter's in Pisces. It's in this degree that has a lot to do with participation in a collective peak experience, right? We're all together at this Easter parade, or whatever. The idea is that it's the experience of all being together in this peak experience and experiencing everybody having their own experience, but in the same peak experience of rebirth and renewal. And that is a big part of Pisces as well, because for as much as it represents, the endings of things and isolation and bondage, because you can't really get out from under your own karma without acknowledging it and writing, balancing it out in some way, or releasing yourself from the contracts that have been fulfilled. But also part of it is the unfolding, right? Is the peak experience. It is actually coming back into a recognition that the cycle is about to start over. And so, 17 degrees Pisces very much is the participation in the collective peak experience, but it's going to be, it's directly trying the moon in Cancer. So as we are feeling an urge to actualize our potential, as we are unfolding at many levels of potential from this original seed point, Jupiter is just out in front, like the drum major at this parade of this Easter parade, being the collective symbolic meaning of it. And these two, again, it's very emotionally stabilized, very expansive in our emotions. I feel like that the collective peak experience has the potential to unfold potentials within ourselves that we didn't even know existed. And that's Jupiter. That's where the boundarylessness or the larger than life aspect of Jupiter makes sense. Now, again, we could be taken in by all of the charisma and flashiness of Jupiter at the head of this experience. So we have to be mindful of that too, that we can just get swept away in the experience of it all without any real astral hygiene in this realm. And believe me, the full moon in Virgo is going to show us exactly where we're at with our astral and energetic hygiene and our purification and our humbleness too. It's going, and our capacity to really seize our own self and our own integrity in the face of the maximization, right? Or the fulfillment of a cycle that is about to turn over. So the moon comes into a quincunx with Saturn right after this. Saturn is in a very difficult position now in Aquarius. Coming into the last decan of Aquarius is very much about the management of what society has contributed to create collectively. And there is a sense here with Saturn that is going to be bitter, but also provide an incredible amount of strength, because it is about looking up to, well, it's having the courage to face adversity, but it also and gives us incredible amount of resiliency. That is also really clear to me. What Saturn could provide for. Let's see here. I don't know if I actually wrote it down, but it does represent Saturn. Where it represents is having the resilience under adversity. Like, even though you may feel disillusioned or discouraged, you still are like facing things head on, and we do it together. And Saturn is, like I said, very limiting, but also creates a very strong scaffolding and backbone for these experiences as well. And so it depends on how you see Saturn, where it's at in your chart, what else is making connection to Saturn. But it has a lot to do with it. You draw your resiliency from your fellows, right? From humanity in general, from the idealized nature of what we're doing. That is where your courage and resilience will come from, even in the face of personal disappointment or or discouragement. Now, the moon is in another quincunx. Lots of quincunxes with our Cancer moon being so powerful. But again, this is an opportunity to adjust ourselves, because this is about our own virtuosity and the emotional reward that we get when we are performing and offering what we have to the emotion, to strengthen the bonds of whatever container we find ourselves in, whether it be our marriage or our home and family of origin and those relationships, whether it be whatever group that we identify with at an emotional level, right? That community that is really held together by their love for each other, or just the fact that they come from the same place, right? The roots, again, that's a good way to think about it. The adjustment here with Saturn is that we really do. We want to give. We want to be a space in which that virtuosity or that that excellence can come through and I would say facilitate the bonding of the family or the community. And the quincunx, again, is just going to be, how do we adjust ourselves? Because one is about how we actually individually feel on the inside, and the other is a very strong authority limiting factor that is much more related to time, that is giving us the strength to have resilience, to tap into the security and the unyieldingness of Saturn in terms of the social collective or humanity in general. But I would say that the adjustment here is that we're going to want to we feel so strongly of offering what we have, but there's going to be so much adversity to face, that we may just need to adjust our expectations in terms of what we each individually are able to do, right? And what I will say is that Lilith at the end of Saturday is going to be in a square to the Neptune and the Sun right before they are also conjunct. So again, there may be a sense of self-preservation of our own mental state, or a sense of mutability in our mind, and we may want to keep our mind kind of like high up in that tree, and it's not going to work with the incredible power that is being released with the Sun and Neptune in a conjunction, right? It's just the square is going to, and this is going to be very difficult, because if you are like, holding on for dear life for preservation or survival, or a sense of, demanding, keeping that creative integration and that spiritual aspect of yourself, as much as you want to keep it protected, it's like the floodwaters are coming in with the Sun and Neptune, right? Like, you have to actually take these ideals and substantiate them. And the only way that we can do that is, well, in the case of Neptune and Sun coming together, it is absolutely in, it is absolutely in full substantiation by giving of our vital energies. I struggle, and I hesitate to use the word sacrifice, but what it says is that the person who believes that there's a mission, or that they have any special gift that can be of value to the community, must substantiate this belief, right? You have to produce results if you are going to be offering yourself in your own vital energy to substantiate what it is. And so there is a demand that the gift of power of value is deeply one's own, right? It has to be coming right from the individual. And with the Sun involved, this is very much about each of our individual voices. Something precious in a deeply personal experience has to be surrendered or offered to others. This is where the Sun and Pisces are going to, and Neptune are going to meet in Pisces, is at this degree, okay? So on right as we come into Sunday. But before that happens, the moon is going to trine both of these figures in Cancer. And this is an important moment where we get to have an objective and critical approach to things in our culture, and some underlying psychological or emotional issues with those factors in our, those common factors in our culture. And so it's often like the poets and the writers and people of that type of nature. Oh, Mercury in Pisces, that seems to be very relevant right now. They're able to tap into something that's more, there's an intellectualization of something that is very deeply felt. And this is literary, really, truly is about, writing and articulating one's thoughts, or, notions or images coming into some sort of verbal expression. So the Sun and both Neptune being in a trine to the moon at this degree, this is allowing us, this is where it gets good with the moon in Cancer, because now we're starting to move into Pleiadian territory. So allow yourself, wow, I just got a really strong tone. It's gone already. It was really high pitched and fast and came in very quickly. This is as soon as I said this is Pleiadian territory. So an objective and critical approach to common factors. This is where the moon is. So tapping into your own intuition, tapping into this objective and critical approach to something that is very deeply felt, and your ability to express it, or at least acknowledge it, is going to be a very emotionally stabilizing moment with this Sun and Neptune conjunction. You really want to know. You really want to be sensitive to, and even verbalize or intellectualize what you deeply feel, so that it will be substantiated in a way that is conscious rather than unconscious. The moon will come and make a trine in Cancer right after that to the South Node in Scorpio. And I wanted to show you this chart because there's this beautiful water trine with the moon and the Sun, Neptune, and K2. And Pluto, actually it's a kite if you add Pluto into the mix, which is only, a couple degrees off, and it's the top of the kite. So incredible opportunities and an amazingly spiritually and emotionally balanced moment with the moon in her home sign, Sun and Neptune in Pisces, so Neptune in his home sign, and then the South Node in Cancer. We can't forget about Scorpio, excuse me. We can't forget about Scorpio, and we have to be very aware of where we're coming from and the power that is part of our past. And there's power is used for all kinds of things, and this is definitely related to the economy and our economy system in general. And I talked about that in the Pleiadian revival. So this trine is really important to our emotional and our spiritual stabilization in this moment, because we may find ourselves overshadowed by some sort of superior power, right? The muse, because we have created a space and commitment to something that the muse can come in and have a response to, even just to integrate our own personality through whatever endeavors. And so in a trine to Ketu, or the South Node in Scorpio, remember, this is the X-ray photograph. There's something here. It's like whatever we are able to see from our past, deep into the structure. And I guarantee you, where Pluto is right now, it is being unearthed. We won't even have to use any technology to get into the structural undercarriage of society. Pluto is going to unearth what has been hidden. We won't have to even read the tea leaves or use any kind of tech. It'll be raw and very accessible and surfaced with where Pluto is right now. And this will happen again all year, because Pluto is going to go retrograde over this point and then come back. So we may have, maybe it's the X-ray vision of what's been. Maybe it's the experience of the power that is underlying things that we have access to. And with this moon in Cancer, it could allow for spiritual forces to come in and integrate. Again, this is all Pleiadian territory now. 25 degrees Cancer is in a sextile to the Pleiades. It's in a trine to Scorpio. And so what are those spiritual forces? How are they going to respond? What kind of space have we made? Are our endeavors filled with character and integrity? All of these things will matter as we are and in some ways, it's the response of spiritual forces, or the descent of the muse or our own spiritual power, that is going to allow for the X-ray view of what's been happening. That also means that this moon is in a sextile to Rahu, or the North Node, which is really where our soul is being pulled right now in order to evolve. And so if we do nothing here, we still have an incredible view into what's going on, but we can take that willful descent, or not even, we are the willful person creating a space and allowing in spiritual forces that are only accessible from the inside, deep, intuitive place. We're allowing that as well to be invested into our soul's evolution right now, which is in much more of what's inherently value, the collective cultivation of energies for all of our benefit, right? This is where we want to go toward, but this is going to require that we apply or invest the descent of this very spiritual power into the soul's journey into the inherent value of nature, of being here, of God's work, right? And that's what Taurus is. This is why people would worship it. It's not so much that, well, maybe it was misplaced, but it's the idea that the fertility of the land and the experience of what is naturally and inherently valuable is something to revere and to respect. So, but we have to actually give, we have to be in a place emotionally that can hold the descent of some sort of superior spiritual power. Because if we're not, and this is going to be something all day today that is going to have us adjust ourselves emotionally the whole time, is by the time we get to this point, which is Saturday, or Sunday, excuse me, it'll be way more we'll be able to be very rooted, right? And then Sun conjuncts Neptune right after that. And that's when the moon opposes Pluto in the 29th degree. And the 29 degrees Cancer is a Greek muse. Again, the muse wording, weighing newborn twins in the golden scales. And it really represents that the mastery of Cancer and the Cancer energy is the anima at work, right? The intuition or the muse is able to show what the choice is. You may hesitate before making a decision in terms of, who you are, how you're going to voice this. You're intuitive weighing the alternatives, but it's the anima at work. And we saw that in the reading a couple days ago as well, anima and animus, right? The balancing of the polarities. And so we're still in Pleiadian territory in both the moon and Pluto, right? They're opposing each other, but both of these are resonant Pleiadian starseed markings at 29 degrees Cancer and Capricorn. So again, the intuitive weighing of alternatives, right? The intuition. This is where it's going to really challenge us as Pluto is pulling back the veil. In fact, Pluto is the power of the X-ray photograph, but you need an X-ray photograph to get to the structural aspect when things are kept a secret. Pluto, there's no secrets here now, right? Pluto is just unearthing it all. And so maybe it'll be very difficult to actually come to a consensus within ourselves emotionally in the face of having to see something that is really raw and powerful and may really, really challenge all of us. And then the moon comes into Leo by the end of the weekend, right? And Vesta is now in Aquarius, and so then the moon's going to make an opposition to all of that Aquarian energy. So we'll go back to the Atlantean aspect again over this time, and then we'll be coming into the full moon next weekend. So, man, I'm really sorry about the stream and the everything about the today's broadcast. I feel like that I did pretty well, though, being able to roll with the punches. I have good streaming software, and it's good to be flexible, right? And the moon in Cancer may have us not be very flexible in some ways because we're very entrenched into these inner values or customs or family ties or commitments, right? That may not feel flexible, right? A plant can't just get up and walk away, but there's something incredibly stabilizing about this that is going to allow access to something so much deeper, right? The roots draw up water. And so we can think about that as well as we're going through all of our challenges. But remember, that water trine, I will post when I have internet again or whatever's going on, if that's even a possibility. I will post a chart if you want to look at it, because it's just so beautiful. And remember, the opposition with the moon and Pluto, it may be very tense, but that's the spine of the kite, and everything around it is the kite, the structure of the kite, all the points. And what does a kite do? It flies, right? It rides the currents of spirit or air. The air aspect of spirit is the logos, words, right? Thoughts and digital signals, and electrical signals, right, moving through the air, and light, right? Light in itself, photons really fit into the Gemini energy as well. They are also mutable, right? We know that photons or light travel as a particle and as a wave, right? They're just like the ocean, right? Each molecule of water is like a photon, but it all travels in a wave function. Boy, it's interesting. So it's interesting that these two things are square to each other, but so familiar, Pisces and Gemini. Keep that in mind, because this is where Lilith is. Black Moon Lilith is in Gemini right now. So the mutability of the mind and the spirit from that perspective is also really important to understand, because it's really going to pull us down into some much more almost animalistic, and don't take that too literally. I'm talking about down into our very blueprint of humanity, and wanting to preserve that, right? Wanting that to be acknowledged for for what it is. And also too, that the mitochondrial DNA only comes from the mother. If we lose that, then there's no humanity, right? Mitochondria is really important to eukaryote cell, right? Animal cells and fungi, right? I don't believe plants have a mitochondria. So, but they have, they have quantum structures. Apparently, they're quantum. I feel like they are, right? That turn sunlight into food. So I don't think they need a mitochondria. Anyway, we can talk about that kind of stuff at the next fellowship gathering. That'll be in about 2 weeks from now. So in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for rolling with the punches. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading, you're interested in being part of the Starship Fellowship, everything you need is in the description box below, including my website, access to Subscribestar, access to Telegram, and links to today's image from the astronomy photo of the day, and also links to the intro music. Have a great weekend as much as you can. Stay in touch. We're on Telegram. We got a chat function. Email me if you need support. And I will see you guys on Monday for Starseed Ministry. Take care. Have a great weekend. And I love you guys. Bye.